Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. The book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, came out in 2020, followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children in 2023. Then Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through the Foster Care and Court Systems came out July 17th of 2024 as a bestseller. Please feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I have a brand new guest on. I'm very happy to have Cristal Salazar on. She's from Texas. She's been fighting a battle against the Texas child protective system that has wrongfully torn her family apart. Her children were removed from her care in April of 2024 after a series of illegal and unethical actions by CPS investigators. Despite no imminent danger, no trial, and no proper investigation, her son was sent to a juvenile detention center far from home based on false allegations of physical neglect. Throughout this whole ordeal, the system has blocked Cristal at every turn, failing to provide clear allegations or even follow their own investigation rules. In June of 2024, the Office of Consumer Affairs in charge of DFPS issued its second apology to Cristal, admitting failures in handling her case. Cristal is here to share her story and expose the systemic failures that so many families, not only in Texas, but throughout the United States and globally, face in the fight to keep their children safe. And I totally am very honored to have you on, Cristal. Where are you at with your case? And when was the last time you talked to your children?
Oh, thank you for having me. Um,
Hey, we just had a minor computer glitch and Cristal is back on. And my last question to her was, where are you at with your case? And when did you see your kids last?
Hi, thanks for having me. So right now with my case, I just had the status hearing, and the last time I saw my kids, I saw my daughter. It was back on actually the removal date, and then I haven't seen my son since about the middle of May when I got to do a video chat with him, and um, it was very short. He cut it short, and they put him on psychotropic medication, so he wasn't really coherent. I could tell he didn't really understand really what was going on to the extent of the entire case, but also he didn't remember having a dog that we had just gotten him, like not even a few months prior. So, that was really just concerning because we got that dog specifically for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And usually
So,
boys don't forget their dogs at all.
yeah, absolutely. So
So,
that's kind of where I'm at.
so he's been in this juvenile detention center. Um, how old is he?
He's 13. He's got a disability, to a documented disability. He has global developmental delay disability that affects his mobility and balance. He was receiving physical therapy since kindergarten for that to help with his dexterity. And also, he walks on his tippy toes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so he's, getting corrective therapy for that. But his pediatrician also authorized a service dog for
mm-hmm.
him. But then that was right when COVID happened. So, we're just finally being able to play catch up and get those services started again since COVID. But um, so he's 13, and the judge at the adversary hearing had decided to send my son without hearing any evidence. The detective on the case against him had admitted on the stand that he had not heard anything, the interview that my daughter did. Excuse me, that was where those allegations were coming from. But he hadn't interviewed either one of the children, and he wasn't planning on it either.
So the judge didn't interview the kids at all. And
The judge or the detective.
do you want to name the judge?
Yes, Judge Graham.
Is that a man or a woman?
It's a man. It's a gentleman, Jack. Judge, yeah, it's Jack Graham.
Shame on him. Ugh,
Yeah. But
destroying
then,
our children. Oh,
yeah, and it's actually changed now. So now I have Judge Anderson. He's on the case. I don't know his first name, but so now he's taken over because he feels as though that, now that my son has these charges, he's just gonna, come right in and I guess take over both of them. So
now the charges that this judge is saying that your son has, what are they?
um okay, so if I could just explain a little bit just so that
Okay.
there's clarity. So on the day of the removal, imminent danger has to be, present for the decision making.
Hmm.
And in our situation, um, 24 hours after the removal is when my daughter was taken to an advocacy center here in my town, and an interview was done with my daughter. And in that interview that I wasn't present for, that CPS was overseeing,
Hmm.
um, she made an outcry against her brother, her older
Mm.
brother, and it was of sexual abuse. And the crazy thing is I'm not perfect. I do have a previous CPS case. I worked very hard. I got my kids back, and my daughter was in a previous foster home, and now she went back to that foster home. And that foster mom, though, she's a teacher in the school district here, and so she's a state mandated reporter. And at any point in time, by law, she would have to report if she thought anything was happening. And my daughter never made an outcry to her, never made an outcry to me. And so 24 hours after removal, here's my
Hmm.
daughter, she's being given this interview. She makes these allegations. Well, my son was already removed 10 hours away from me. And so on the day of removal.
That sounds fishy.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Oh,
mean, and honestly, I didn't even find out that my son was that far away until May 5th, and the children were removed from my care on April 25th.
jeez. Do you think your daughter was coerced into saying something?
Absolutely. I mean, just the verbiage that they used in the evidence report doesn't sound like my daughter. And um, in my opinion, I feel as though that this whole thing is just retaliation. Back in October of 2023, my daughter was interviewed at school, and under TEA guidelines, it states that if a CPS worker is going to go to the school, they have to either be authorized by the parent to have a third party
Oh,
do a visual examination, or the nurse has to be present, or a medical doctor, or a court order. And none of those things were followed. In fact, the school put my daughter into a conference room with a male CPS worker. He didn't even have a partner.
oh,
And in that interview, at some point, my daughter had told me that her bare chest was exposed. She's 8 years old.
oh.
She received speech therapy at school because she has delayed speech, and I did keep her behind in kindergarten because of delayed disabilities. So, um, or learning, I should say. And
Mhm.
so she came home in October of 2023 and told me as soon as she got home how uncomfortable she was, that this man had lifted her shirt and was taking photographs of her bare chest.
Oh,
And so I made a complaint with Consumer Affairs, and in November of 2023, I received the first apology letter in which they stated that, he was not following the guidelines, and that also the time frame in which the case had been open had been exceeded over the initial allotted time. And that seems to be something that's very consistent with CPS, is that once they get a case, they just don't care how long it's open.
Right.
And so here we are, November, I get that letter. Well, at some point, that gentleman, to my understanding, was let go. And that was told to me by the supervisor on my case now. And the gentleman that is the investigator on this case that led to my removal, he actually grew up with the gentleman that was photographing my daughter. They grew up together in El Paso, which is 7 hours from where my hometown is.
That's creepy.
Yeah. And I mean, he posted it all over his Facebook about how they grew up together and how he wished he protected his best friend back in their childhood days. And, I brought that concern to the director, and um, they just kind of laughed it off and said that, nothing of that sort is going on here. And they didn't remove him off the case or anything. So but it's just, like getting somebody to listen to me,
Hmm.
that's been really hard. So that's why I'm really thankful for this opportunity right now.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. But like the male CPS investigated worker who interviewed your daughter, he has been let go though, right? Or
But to my understanding, yes.
okay.
And that was told to me in text message from the supervisor that's on my case now.
So she couldn't call you, she just texted you.
Oh no, she definitely called me 10 times
Oh,
uh
okay.
one morning, but we had the wildfires here about that same time frame. And at the time I was going to school for firefighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was doing volunteer work with my local fire department. And so I unfortunately got let go of because of the CPS case. So just taking a different route, or scenic route, as my dad would say.
Oh, this
But
is
yeah,
yeah. So then what happened like after they made this apology, then they made
well,
another one, right?
yeah, then another case opened, and oh well,
Oh,
all of those allegations against me at the time that had been opened in October actually had been ruled out. So it was physical neglect of both the children and the medical neglect of my son, is what the allegations were at the time. But so upon that apology letter, though, they did rule out everything against me. And then not even 2 months later, another investigation opened.
yeah. So they retaliated. That sounds familiar because that happened to me too, except they retaliated 4 days later after closing a case. This is
Yeah,
terrible.
it's horrible. It really is. And then just the oversight. I mean, just to see that. I mean, even my documentation. I actually filed another complaint here recently because the documentation and even just the communication in which my case was opened. The form that I received the first day. Um, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the CPS worker's name, but that's on the case now, or the investigator. He left a form with me and it said concerns Cristal's neglecting her children, and that's it. It didn't specify anything else. It didn't. We didn't even discuss ways to mitigate the situation. He left my house and didn't return for 3 months.
But in the meantime, you didn't even have your kids, right?
No, I did at this time. Yes.
Oh,
So in
okay.
January, I'm sorry. So January, when this case being the removal one,
Okay.
January when it actually opened, January 18th, I believe. And so whenever the gentleman now got on the case, whenever he came out to my house, the forms that he gave me was only one form actually, and it just said concerns Crystal's neglecting her children. And again, there's no way to mitigate the situation because I didn't even know what it was. I mean, neglect is such a broad term now, and I know
Mm,
here in Texas they changed the law recently that you can no longer remove a child or children from the home just based off the word neglect. It has to
mhm.
be followed with something else because then you start to class people really because of poverty.
Right.
And so, um, okay, so in January, whenever I got that form in the initial day that he came to visit me and check on the children, he did lay eyes on the kids actually at school. And he didn't return for 3 months, didn't call me, didn't tell me a safety plan or anything. He just left and that was it. So for 3 months I didn't hear anything. April 4th is when he returned with another CPS worker and they wanted to see my house. And I showed him that I had running water and electricity and everything like that. Well, the lady asked me, I think it was like 5 times, if she could come inside my house. And I told her no. I did give my time. I stepped outside, and just reading the evidence report on their version of how things went is just insane. I just can't believe how much they twist the story around the narrative so much.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they lie. They
Right.
lie all the time, and it's so just disheartening because essentially I feel as though they don't care about what really happens to us.
No, no. And they also perjure themselves on the witness stand. I've seen that too.
Yeah. And one thing that I really wanted to bring up too was the personal knowledge portion on the affidavit. I know that there's a lot that's just been wrong with my paperwork, the documentation, the court orders, um, the order in which the papers were filed, even at the courthouse. I know that they put in an emergency extension and a modification at 4:34 on the removal day, but the petition to remove the kids wasn't filed until 5 o'clock in the evening. And so, I mean, to me, that doesn't sound as though that's the correct order. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I did look up, you
Hmm.
know, typically how it's supposed to go. And so, since they did put in a court order to remove the children, they can't go based off of, well, we're removing them without a court order
Hmm.
because there was the petition at one point. But so there's that, and then the judge's signature was just copy and pasted. It wasn't an actual signature. I mean, you can tell it was just copy and pasted.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know if that's normal. I guess so. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, yeah, I've always seen the rubber stamp, but
yeah, that wasn't even,
yeah.
there wasn't even that. There wasn't a seal behind it to, um, verify that it was giving the court the authorization to act in that jurisdiction. In my opinion, anyways. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
And that was Judge Graham at that time.
Yes. Yes, the associate judge Graham. And so he was also the presiding judge, which I think there typically would be conflict there too. The associate judge being the presiding judge over the case.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict.
Yeah. Just not a
Uh,
lot of following the rules.
right. No oversight.
Yeah. And I know one thing too that they alleged was, and I didn't find out what the actual allegations were until the day of removal when I was texting the supervisor and she started naming off things. And one of those was drug use. And at no point in time, not January, February, March, April, nobody authorized
Mm-mm.
me or told me to go drug test. In fact, I offered on April 4th to go drug test because the lady was standing there after I refused to let her in my house. She said, I could just get a court order to go inside your house. And I said, well, I understand that is something you're able to do if there's an emergency. So what is that emergency? And she just started naming random things. And one of those was drug use. And I said, you know what? I'm on the fire department right now, volunteer. And my chief, who actually had ended up retiring, had, given me a drug test before in the past for accountability when CPS stepped in and tried to get involved.
Mhm.
But, you know, um, I just feel like there's a lot on my side where there's a lot of accountability, and that was the caseworker. I mean, I'm sorry, not the caseworker, the foster mom that was a teacher,
Mhm.
and then my fire chief. I mean, those are two pretty credible people in my life that I was dealing with a lot.
So They didn't even ask you, gee, when was that drug screen done? They didn't say, can we talk to this retired fireman?
No, no. In fact, am I allowed to say anybody's names? Like, I mean, I don't care, but I just didn't know.
Well, if it's in public record,
I mean, I would think so. uh, I mean, it will be eventually, but I don't know. It's just really hard to not, if I'm
but if
being
yeah, if you don't
the
feel comfortable, you don't have to.
oh no, I do. I feel really comfortable. I mean,
Okay.
that, but I mean, I just want there to be accountability. And
Mhm.
so the CPS worker through St. Francis Ministry, Tiffany Brown, actually went down and talked to my new fire chief. She didn't realize that literally within the time frame of um, her coming onto the case and CPI, the investigation portion, transferring it to her, the chief had retired. So literally within like 2 weeks. So
Oh,
she drove down to my fire station, talked to the new chief, in which I got reprimanded, told I was a liar, and got kicked off. And so I found out from her that I had been kicked off because she told me, "You're not even on the department," which I was really confused because 2 nights prior, my fire chief, the new one, had told me I was fine and, just take care of things. So there's just even that was like I felt overstepping the boundary because by that point, the drug test should have absolutely already been done or something, and there should have been a record of that, and the investigation should have been left to the investigation. So she didn't probably need to drive down there and verify.
well, and you don't know what she told him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. These people are known to lie and, well, destroy lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even have a criminal record, even though I do have a previous CPS case. And this is another thing that I would like to question really is, I mean, I don't have a criminal record. I've never been to jail.
Hmm.
I don't have a mugshot, anything like that, and I'm very proud of that. And it definitely has led me to be able to pursue my dreams. And, I want to be a pilot. And so continuing on this path that would allow me to provide for my children
Hmm.
solely. And now, I mean, up until a couple of weeks ago, I didn't know if that was going to be possible because of this. So, but I feel as though if something so bad happens to where children are removed from the parent, then why isn't there always charges? They should, I mean, not they necessarily, but I would absolutely feel as though if I did something bad, that bad, that my children need to be removed, I would want to be in jail because, I mean, they should just always be followed with the criminal charges. I'm sorry. Like that's just how I mean, it doesn't make any sense. How are you
Mm-mm.
going to let me be free out in this world right now? And you're pointing your finger at me and you're accusing me of said allegations, then, but yet you're letting me walk around free and I'm not in jail. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's because they can't prove it. If they could prove it, maybe that would be a different story. Because I mean, I was indicated on emotional child abuse. They couldn't prove it. They were just doing, like you said, a one-sided interviews with other people and nothing on your side.
Right. But see, isn't that where like the catch 22 is though? Because they can't prove it, but they can prove it enough to take the kids.
Hmm.
But on a criminal level, they can't prove it. So then where is that tipping point? That's what I feel needs to be definitely over, we need to go back and ask the lawmakers and everything that. And then also, especially now, seeing how many discrepancies there are within the documentation, it is like that judge definitely just signed the paper. He signed it without looking at any of it. And because of that, I firmly believe that, maybe it's going to take the judges we're gonna have to just take back immunity, really. Like, they need to be able to be charged.
Hmm.
If they do something wrong, they should be able to be held accountable too,
Well,
because I mean,
the thing
it's
is,
just
I smell a rotten fish here because this Judge Graham, Jack Graham, right? So he puts your son into a juvenile detention center, right? So is he
yeah.
getting a kickback for sending a kid into this juvenile detention center? Because over here in Pennsylvania, Luzerne County, two judges went to jail for a kids for cash scheme,
Oh, wow.
sending kids to juvie.
I mean, that sounds almost identical. I will tell you this now. I won't say the probation officer's name, but whenever the initial day that I had to talk to my son's probation officer in, I believe it was June, I'm confused because my understanding of the law is if you get probation after you've been charged with a crime, and that's just part of like your sentencing, if you will. Again, I've never been in trouble with the law like that. So whenever she talked to me, she said, I haven't experienced this before, where a child hasn't gone before a judge in the sense of pleading true or guilty, the child themselves, or hasn't gone before a jury.
Mm,
Okay. So, and she thought that the charges were actually out of a different county because my son is 10 hours away. He's in a
hmm.
totally different county. There's a juvenile detention center right up the road from where I live right now. So, why is he not here?
Hmm.
And so she was very confused, and she said, well, I don't know which judge signed off on him, you know, um, but the charges are here in Randall County. That's where I live. And she said, I've never experienced it like this. But she said, I always come on after, there's either a trial or, the verdict is guilty, or the child pleads true, which is basically the child just pleading guilty as well. So, um, but that's definitely not what happened in this case. And so now my son's criminal defense attorney refuses to talk to me. And that really started back in June because I got a phone call from CPS in June telling me that another case had been open. And at first I was confused because they said, well, there's some allegations right now. And this time it was on me from my son. So at some point he had talked to somebody without his lawyer present, without his ad litem, without me. Um, and later on I found out he was talking to his probation officer and made allegations against me. And so for a good 2 to 3 months, I mean, I was looking at 20 years minimum in prison.
What were
And I was very scared.
right, right. What were the allegations, if you don't mind?
Um, sexual abuse on a child.
Uh,
And then 2 weeks after my son made the allegations, he went back and changed his story. And so I talked to the CPS worker on the case, and she asked me some questions, and I told her that is disgusting that, first of all, like, y'all would even try to come up with a story like that. Just that's really sad. It's disgusting. And they closed it, but it was unable to be determined, is what they left it as. And so but in between that time period, I'm trying to get the information because now my son is going to have to be indicted on those charges. And I don't know what's happening because everything's being done backwards. And at one point, I questioned my son's attorney. I mean, I told CPS from the beginning, if I don't know the law, I'm going to invest my time and my energy into learning it because I'm not going to be ill prepared.
mhm.
This is too valuable. My children need me. I'm their voice. So I think they're trying to make an example of me, it feels like. But my son's attorney definitely is not talking to me. He refuses to talk to me. So
Do you want to name him?
TD Hammonds. And I'm sure he's a great attorney. Don't get me wrong, I have heard some amazing things about him. But in my son's case, um, one evening we argued on the phone for 2.5 hours, and it got to the point where I was reading policy and procedure to him on the way, to my understanding, that a forensic exam is supposed to be done. And I was reading to him the way that my understanding, again, that it's supposed to be done. And he said, well, I've been doing this for so and so years and I've never heard of that. And I said, well, respectfully, sir, just because you haven't heard of things going that way doesn't mean that that's not the way it's supposed to be done. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um he said, well, I don't know where you're getting that information from. And I said, the attorney general's page right here, I can send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I don't know if that's just some Joe Blow in his basement hacking the system. And I said, you're really saying that to me? I said, come on, come on. So I said, how about this? How about, for once, since you have that far out there theory, how about we pretend that I'm actually telling the truth
Mm-hmm.
and that my son is innocent and that I'm innocent and that you are going to defend my son
Mm-hmm.
based on that knowledge. And that's the last time I really talked to him on the phone.
And how long ago was that again? I'm sorry.
Now, that one was in June.
Okay.
We've emailed back and forth quite often, but then he finally just ceased all communication with me in late July.
Mm. So now it's just like you're just punting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to do the right thing by my children and by my son and my daughter. I mean, and that's hard because I'm being looked at as a failing mother, as a failing mother to a daughter that the allegations are, her outcry of sexual abuse, and then as a failing mother to a son that has allegedly made these advances that have these allegations against him, and then just me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like I can't defend either one of them without being ridiculed by CPS
Mm-hmm.
because they say that I'm being too sensitive or too and not, or with the correct verbiage, I'm being insensitive to my daughter's needs when I'm being, there for my son. And so in retrospect of everything though, like, everybody is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a roller coaster of emotions, just to keep it together and just know what the truth is and to bring it to light.
You know, do you think they took advantage of you because of poverty or your job, or they just picked on
Um,
you because of that?
I think honestly, I think it's either the retaliation. I mean, I'm also a product of CPS too. I mean, I grew up from the time I was one until I was 5 years old in the foster care system. I was in two different foster homes and they were horrible. I know exactly what some people go through, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and 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 that's me being honest in that. Yes, I should have been removed from my situation. I was found by a little river, not river like flowing, fast stream river, but a body of water next to the apartment complex where my mom and my grandmother were living.
Mm-hmm.
And I was little. So, I mean, I'm glad that I was taken and put somewhere, but in that situation, no, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have a lot of, trust issues and stuff like that, but I mean, I feel as though that's kind of what made me have that motivation and drive to not be a bad parent, to lose my children. And, unfortunately, I did lose my children the first time, and it is what it is. And I feel like, honestly, that wasn't done the correct way either, but it happened and I worked their program. I did everything that they asked me to. And so right now it's really hard for me to just suck it up and, do what they want me to because they didn't do anything right.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
But I really think that maybe it's because I'm targeted because I was in the foster care
Hmm.
system. That seems to be a reoccurring thing too.
Right. I've talked to a lot of parents that had been in foster care, and it seems that once you've been in there, they're going to haunt you,
Hmm.
throughout your whole life. And this is just terrible.
I was talking to a gentleman last night. He's phenomenal. He's brilliant. His name is Brooks McKenzie,
Hmm.
and anybody in Texas, please look him up. Um, and just do it. You won't regret it. But last night we talked for almost about an hour or so. And in that conversation, he pointed out that, really, I mean, here's the problem. Okay, we've got this problem, there's abuse happening. And so CPS really isn't trying to fix it.
Oh.
Why would they? Because their funding would stop, right?
Hmm.
So they're just gonna keep putting our kids on medication so that there's more mental health issues,
Hmm.
just they're not really fixing the problem. And that's evident, and I wrote on social media the other night that every Texan, in my opinion, should be ashamed of themselves right now because one, if not the only judge that has anybody's back when it comes to children and family rights and everything was removed off the CPS case
Hmm.
that had been going on for 13 years here. And she was charging HHSC, I believe, $100,000 a day for not being in compliance.
Was that Judge
And
Janet Graham Jack?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And I mean, I really hope I get to meet her one day
Me too.
because I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand why she was removed. And um but I was looking at the dates in April. I believe I saw one of the news articles here in Texas states that, you know, she, she was charging the department $100,000 a day for not being in compliance. So
Hmm.
I actually filed a civil rights claim with HHSC at the state level recently, and they accepted it. They investigated. They turned it down because of the verbiage. And so now I know what I need to do. They said that everything that I was alleging that I used and stated that that was the basis of which I was saying that they removed the children.
Hmm.
And so I wrote them back and I told them, honestly and respectfully, I have a problem with it not being looked at further because of the issue of them not being in compliance at the
Hmm.
time. So, and how could Cecile Young is the commissioner, was the commissioner. I don't know if she still is, but back in, I believe, August, she was. And that's the same lady that was being charged $100,000 a day, or at least her department, respectfully, is being charged $100,000 a day until Jack was removed from
Hmm.
the Honorable Judge Janice Jack was removed. So, um, but up until then, I mean, Cecile Young, I'm pretty sure is still driving to her office, sitting in her chair, typing away at her desk every single day with no repercussions. And they're still taking away kids knowing that they're not following the rules. Like there's definitely a lot of oversight that needs to be looked at if they're being charged $100,000 a day.
But are they really being charged? Are they really coughing up that money?
I'm gonna say no. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I don't know. I would like, I'm probably gonna have to do a little research on that.
Yeah. Because I found with even state civil lawsuits, someone can win
Mhm.
monies, but that doesn't mean they're going to be paid these
Right.
monies.
Yeah. Yep. And that's even more of like a slap on in the face if you think about
Hmm.
it too. Like and that's another thing that I mentioned in my post was, think about all of those people that she was fighting for 13 years,
Hmm.
how they must feel like the one chance that our
Oh.
state had to just do the right thing. One time, people, one time. And what did they do? They remove her.
Mm.
So this whole 13 years is pretty much for nothing. So hopefully they'll just get somebody in there that will continue in her footsteps
Mhm.
and be able to help make some progress.
But then not to be, you know, would they remove that person too because they're in the way of, see, I think um, foster care and CPS and family court should be abolished. They serve
Yeah,
no earthly purpose, but just to destroy families.
yeah, I agree.
Now,
I agree. And especially, I'm sorry, especially though with and now, and I brought this up to, I had two lawyers that I was paying before my court appointed. I spent a lot of my inheritance money on lawyers that did nothing. So, but because of the Chevron Act, now I know people are going to say that that doesn't apply to my case and blah, blah, blah. But when something is overturned at a federal level, it does fall down to being able to be implemented at a state level.
mhm.
And so I think sometimes whenever I'm explaining this, some people don't like understand that. So that's why I was just reiterating that. But in that, so now I feel like how are we going to start implementing that in the courts now in administrative capacity? I mean, I'm learning a lot.
Right,
So, but the Chevron Act, I mean, so CPS, here they are with their policies and their procedures, but it's not law. That doesn't make it law.
right, right. I'm looking at it right now.
And again, I will say one thing though about, I was adopted out of CPS. So if you are adopted in the state of Texas, they will pay your education for the rest of your life. You can double major as long as you're maintaining your grades. So I have a lot of almost degrees, and I'm actually going to start law school soon. So
Well,
to
God
continue,
bless you. Oh,
yeah. So,
that's, oh man. What about being a pilot? You still want to do that too?
oh yeah, yeah,
Huh?
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I just feel so bad this has happened. And what also concerns me about foster care is these people are not even vetted to even have these kids. Some of them. Some of them
Yeah.
are, but they're still contributing to the problem of foster care because of the Title 4E incentives.
Mhm.
So all these foster parents, and I've had other foster children on where they were referred to as their Denali payments.
Oh gosh.
And so I just think that should be gone. The incentive should be gone. Okay, so vet people, if a child needs to go somewhere, vet people, but you're not going to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to have 8 kids in your house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And see, and it breaks my heart too, because, the first time the kids, when they were removed, I mean, they weren't put together because my son, I mean, he has ADHD. You know, he's, he's just a people person. So sometimes staying in his own space of just energy,
Mhm.
not physically, just his energy level doesn't always resonate with other people.
Right.
And I get that. So, but he wants to be an astronaut when he gets older, like,
Mhm. He has
but
dreams too.
yeah, exactly. And that's what, man, Annalise Kendall, man, I'm praying for you, and I want you to know that I forgive you, and that, I mean, I just don't understand how she could, along with Joel Rodriguez, just feel that it's okay to jeopardize my son's freedom like this, because he has his whole life ahead of him,
Mm. Mm.
and but they're not together. And so I know the first time my son had, you know he got sad. I mean, he didn't understand why my daughter got to go to essentially, I mean, it was a fairy tale place. She was spoiled and came back and was this spoiled, precocious princess, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And um, I felt like I was doing the right thing in maintaining a very close relationship for them because, this lady did step in when I couldn't. At the time, I was living in a different town and coming here um, to be near my daughter. But I did grow up here as well. She did step in, and I felt like it was important for accountability for me and just to maintain that structure for her, that she was familiar with that. And it almost blew up in my face, and I hate to say that, because this lady and this family, they're fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like I'm gonna have to rethink things when my daughter comes home because you know, her foster parent at this time was kind of involved. I feel like she didn't have my back at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just makes me wonder too, like really what was her motive this whole time? Was it to adopt my daughter?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I don't know. This
Do
whole
you
thing is just, I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, yes. Yes. Other parents have said that as well. Do you think that foster mother that your daughter's with, is she making your daughter call her mom?
No, I don't. I've never I've never had concerns of that, and it's never come up before. She always calls the foster mom by her name.
Hmm.
Um, I think in regards to visitation, I'm not getting them because the first time that I was allowed visitation back in April, or it might have been May, my daughter, I guess, started crying, and she said that she was afraid that I was going to be upset with what she said about her brother.
Hmm.
And so this would have been after, the interview and stuff. And I mean, of course, I wouldn't be upset with her because I mean, I really feel like it was coerced. She didn't know. I mean,
Right.
she's 8 years old. Well, now 9. She had her birthday this past week. So,
Aw.
and that's hard. Like we had plans. We were going to go to space camp this summer down in
Mhm.
Florida, and our first family vacation, like a real one. And I missed my daughter's birthday now. And I mean, my son's a teenager. He's 13, and there was things that he was looking forward to in this school year. And
Yeah, this is absolutely horrible. I also interviewed Connie Regularly. I don't know if you've heard of her,
I
but
don't believe so.
she's in Tennessee. And one of our last interviews, I think it was like last year or so, but she said Tennessee was building more juvenile detention centers at taxpayers' expense.
I it I just I don't understand how it's so much different. I keep getting told that like it's just different than adults being criminally charged. And I mean, I if anything, I feel like if it's going to be different, they need to be more protected. I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
because essentially, well, what happened was when they removed my son to Houston, the day of the children being taken, April 25th, they took him to Houston that same day. My daughter hadn't even made the allegations against him
Oh,
yet until 24 hours later. And so that's where his lawyer has been contradicting himself in his emails to me, telling me that that's why my son is where he's at now is because of those allegations, but he had already been moved.
and she made those allegations 24 hours later. What doesn't
Yeah.
he get?
And well, what policy and procedure, since that's what they love to go off of, gave Annalise Kendall the right to decide, I'm going to wake up this morning and we're going to have your daughter, which I mean, I didn't even know till April 5th that this had happened, to go down and be interviewed for a forensic interview and then a medical interview there at the advocacy center. I mean, she didn't leave from her doctor's office. In fact, I found out that her doctor's office doesn't have a SANE certified nurse there.
Mm.
So they would have to go elsewhere, whether it be the emergency room or an advocacy center, which that to me, if there's a medical exam going on now, I mean, they could be lying about this because my lawyer has yet to be able to get the information from them. But
Hmm.
if she had been subjected to a medical exam, this would be now 2 times that they have assaulted my daughter. I mean, once at school. I
Hmm.
mean, and then now, but why wasn't it done at the hospital or urgent care or at a doctor's office? They did it there at the same people that she made the outcry to, which is also against the attorney general's policy and procedure when it comes to when an outcry is made to a medical professional underneath their title or whatever, they can't be the ones performing the exam.
Right. I don't know why they just didn't take her to the emergency room and just do a an sane SANE examination.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know either. And so I've and I actually just to back up a little bit, I filed a police report on the CPS worker that had photographed my daughter in May.
Hmm.
Is when I was able to file that police report. And um, you know, the detective on that case, he laughed at me. He laughed at me and told me that no crime had been committed.
Ah, whoa.
And that really put into perspective for me of just almost how deep this corruption just goes in this town. And I really feel like I have a right to say that only because, I mean, my grandmother, her grandfather was one of the first pharmacists and doctors in this town
Hmm.
when it was being first established. Like my adoptive roots run deep in this town. My grandfather on my dad's side was the first Hispanic college professor at Amarillo College. The Hispanic scholarship was set up because of him, and so like to know that they were prominent people in this town and to see how maybe this has been going on this whole time, but to actually see it being done.
Hmm.
I mean, my grandparents, it just wouldn't have happened to me or anybody. Like it's blowing my mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, people think they're safe, like you thought you were safe with all your history, but until it,
Yeah, I just want to say, but not just because like I'm entitled to not being looked
right.
at, respectfully, because that's not it. I would hope that everybody in this town and the world would, have the same privilege.
Hmm. But then a lot of people think, oh, this will never happen to me. I'm a general surgeon. This will never happen to me.
Yeah, it's win because I guarantee you, I mean, even if it's just a call, even if
Right?
it's a call, it really is just a matter of time.
You're absolutely right. Tell me more about the St. Francis Ministries.
Oh yes. So this is something that I've just now I'm just learning just because I'm now getting in contact with my CPS workers. So as I was kind of explaining earlier, CPS has split now into two portions of CPS within itself. There's CPI, the investigation stage, which can't be open more than 45 days when they're doing the initial investigation, just so y'all know. Typically, that's how they like to run things. Now, after the 45 days, they would need to ask for an extension, and that would need to be in writing and given to the supervisor. Now, that's where in June, my case, I filed another complaint, and the the Office of Consumer Affairs apologized for that oversight because it ran past the 45 days being open in January, and the extension request wasn't put in until May 29th.
Mm.
And so, but anyways, so now CPI is the investigation. Now, when your child goes to CPS, foster care, here in Amarillo, I know that um, St. Francis Ministry, I guess, is starting to take over that role. And
Mhm.
one thing that I was kind of finding out is I guess you don't have to be licensed anymore. I don't know if that's always been a thing.
Mhm.
I still need to do research on that because, to my understanding, they need to follow certain licensing things when you're a social
Mhm.
worker,
Mhm.
um, and you're receiving not they themselves, but like the department is receiving federal funding that they have to
Mhm.
abide by rules. And so, um, just so y'all know, Joel Rodriguez is not certified. I looked up on within the certification of social workers, he's not certified. Um, Especially for his role, I think he's like an investigator, something. He seems pretty high up there, anyways. His supervisor is not certified. Melody Zuninga, um, Tiffany Brown, I believe is not certified either. Don't quote me on that 100%. Um, but so St. Francis is now taking over. And one question that I kind of wanted to talk to you and ask you, maybe your thoughts, opinions, or whatever, is, isn't there supposed to be separation of state and church? Are they considered an actual church? Or like, just how would one go about any of this really, and
Right.
like
I
trying
mean,
to figure it
that
out?
is a good question. And even in my town, we had Catholic social services, which facilitated adoptions out.
Okay.
And I was shocked to find that out that they did also work with CPS.
Mhm.
So I I'm going to go with there should be separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And
Well,
St.
especially,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
Just more so because I feel like now that they've separated here in Texas, that St. Francis is they're getting so much more power. Like I looked on their website and it is insane what all they're offering. There's forms on there. A social worker can go on there and print out the forms that they need.
yeah.
Like I think, I don't know if it's the removal, but like visitation or something like that. Like, and that should, my opinion, should be left on the state page, not on the ministry side.
Right, right. And I interviewed Kelly Patton and Ray Seipolt in Kansas, and they have a St.
Mhm.
Francis ministry up there. And I guess
Yeah,
one of them had gotten closed down, but yet they moved it somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? Like they always
yeah.
do.
I remember I believe this person is now an adult, and I mean it's still on their site unless they take it down after today or who knows. But this person at one point, to my understanding, was in the foster care system, but it was through St. Francis, and they explained how horrible their experience was.
Mm.
And now St. Francis responded because it's public, and they said we can't seem to find you anywhere like associated with us. And you know that just broke my heart to for them if they are just downplaying it. Hopefully they're not, but I mean I know there are trolls out there and whatnot, but still, I mean, I looked at the facility, Stonebridge, I think, maybe. I know that that's a term or a word in there. I don't know if this is the one specifically, but it's like the mental health portion that they have in another state. Actually, I think it might be where you're at. They have a couple of different facilities, and one's like a girls, excuse me, facility. And I mean, it's not even here. And this is on the local page saying that they offer all these services and blah, blah, blah. And then I clicked on it to see, well, what the facility looked like. And it wasn't even in the state. And it almost looked like a prison.
I don't know. I would doubt it. Yeah, I'm so glad I had you on here.
Yeah. Thank
We
you.
we learned a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um, you know, I just want people to know that, I mean, parents, like, we have rights, like, fight for them, just fight for them. And I think that the only way that there's going to be any progress really is all of us uniting. And I don't even know how to go about that. I wish there was an answer. um in my vision it would be marches, but I feel like every civil rights issue that has
Hmm.
made some change has been, people out in the streets marching, voices, like millions of people, something like that. But I mean, I don't even know how to get through to that many people in the sense of getting them to care to
Right.
get out there and do it.
Yeah, I've tried talking to people about foster care and what can go on in foster care, and they don't want to hear it. This is your average person, your next door neighbor, you know, at a party, covering their ears, saying, "No, no, no, I don't want to hear this."
I
Um,
think too, what it boils down to is that, unfortunately, I feel like the foster kids, it's just like maybe they're looked down upon and they don't realize, they being the people that have their kids, and that this isn't an issue for them, that most of the time I mean, these kids in the foster care system are loved. They have parents, they have grandparents, aunts and uncles that are at home fighting for them.
hmm.
They're not just these orphans that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being an orphan. I'm sorry. I mean,
No,
I
you're
was
fine.
one.
You're fine.
I was one. So,
Uh,
but that's just, I mean, it's not, I mean,
well, they're not doing kinship care.
yeah,
They're not following their protocols when they have a child that has, I guess, has been called on, or they're not finding relatives. They don't care because they know they can make this money.
they didn't even okay, Joel, he filled out my information. Okay, i I received HUD. Okay,
Mhm.
I was receiving HUD, and HUD acknowledged me being Native American. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
adopted. I have met my biological mom twice, and she did affirm that, I have Native American ancestry. And so I'm on that path right now, trying to establish that and figure that out. But um HUD, for since 2020, has acknowledged that I'm Native American. Okay.
Mhm.
So Joel, though, on my paperwork, he marked it out saying that I had said that I wasn't.
Oh, that's a huge error. That's
Yeah. Oh, speaking of errors, real quickly, because this is really important too. So the gentleman that had gotten let go of back in October, he had actually asked me to change the date on some paperwork. Like, he had brought
mm,
me a paper specifically that he wanted me to put the date of the very first time that he came to my house.
mhm.
And I said, I think that's against the rules, and I don't really feel comfortable doing that, because that's going to come back on me. And like, I could see where that would be a problem, because you're not doing your paperwork right. I'm going to suffer from it. So I did at the time. I signed it, but in text message, thankfully, and I still have it. I said, you know what? Could you please change the date to today's date? Because I mean, I don't like lying as it is. So, and the fact that you're getting me to lie, it just doesn't feel right. And so
Mhm.
he acknowledged that he had asked me to change it, and that he was going to change it back. So, I mean,
But you haven't seen
there
that paperwork, right? That it has been changed back.
no, I haven't. But knowing, having two apology letters, I think is a start to something, of them acknowledging that yes, there's problems within the department. And then even having that text message of him admitting that, he was asking me to backdate that paper. And I mean, I just don't see how people would even be comfortable with asking somebody to do that. I mean,
Well, and also giving you 2 apology letters admits to their mistake. So why don't they just give you your kids back?
yeah, you would think, yep,
Now,
yep.
how can people reach you if they have any questions? Or do you want them to come through me?
Yeah, I think for right now that would be great if you wouldn't mind facilitating that. Or even you can give them my TikTok, that would be fine.
Okay, what's your handle on TikTok?
I I'm no, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not very tech savvy, and actually I have a good following, but I've never posted anything like of my own. It's just all reposts.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I'm kind of proud about that. But I don't know what it is, so I gave it to you though.
Oh, I'll find it. I'll find it somewhere.
Yeah.
Ah, well, I'm so glad to have you on and to educate more people on this topic.
I mean, I don't know it all, but I'm willing to figure it out and I'm willing to figure it out with other people too. I mean, because here's the thing, even say in a perfect world, if I get to go to the federal level or even the state and we figure this out, it's not going to stop with me. I'm going to continue the fight for other people because, I mean, that's just how it is. It's not going to just stop with me and it's not right and it's not fair for other people to have to go through this.
Right, right. And when we jump off, I'll give you a couple names to,
Okay.
you know, um, get to know. Don't
Okay.
jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and you can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I totally thank you, Cristal Salazar, for
You.
coming on and telling us all of this tragedy.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. And, hopefully we'll get there. We'll get there one day. I have faith.
Yes, we will. Thank you so very much.
Yes. Thank you.